sing the melody of freedom. These are the things that will bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Down, down, down.
Let me tell you, it's in the air. Joy is in the air. Love is in the air. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Don't sleep on it, brother. You might get left, sister. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Justice. No need to be counted, cause I am down. Down, down, down. Down, down, down. Down for the end of racism, for the end of bigotry, cause I am down. For the end of misogyny, that's right. For all the isms out there, just down, down, down. Let's bring it down. Rise up, people. No more foolishness, and let's bring it way down.
Riding the river of change into the cries of contrition. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. We are the children of Eden, dancing and celebrating freedom. We are the ones that must bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. We've got to bring it down. Down. Stand up and shout. Stand up and shout. Rise together.
Accountability starts now. The Eric Dawson Radio Show.
Yeah. Rise up. Stand up, shouting loud.
If you are not prepared to come to that table and to represent that voice, don't come. Because we don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice. And if you're worried about being marginalized and stereotyped, please don't even show up.
Hey guys, good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Eric Dawson Radio Show. Kevin Jenkins is on location somewhere unbeknownst to me, and Diane Murray Clements is in Madrid, Spain. I thank her for calling in yesterday. She was unable to Skype in today, so I'm flying solo. But as always, the call-in number is 908-481-5499. And what I want to start off by saying today, before I get into the topics, there were comments yesterday, as there are always, about whether or not we're spending too much time on any particular topic. I have my thoughts about that. I think that we need to continue to go over things until we see measurable results, right? If we don't see measurable results, then that means maybe we didn't touch on it in a way that really moved people in a significant enough way that brought about measurable results. But beyond that, if there are things that you want to talk about, right, beyond what we're talking about, if there's information that you want to share, the call-in number is listed there, 908-481-5499. You're always welcome to call in and interject comments and or topics that you want to have discussed. Or you can call me or inbox me and say, hey, listen, I'd like you to talk about this thing. I think this thing needs to be covered. I'm not guaranteeing you that we will, but it would be a level of input on your part that would help us broaden some of the topics based on what it is that you want to hear. A couple things that I want to talk about. One is the Harvey Weinstein thing. I'm going to get back to the political stuff because there's some news there too, right? So we're going to spend probably the majority of the time talking about that. There's some news on the political front. If you guys didn't know, Bloomberg has made the debate stage. I don't think that's any surprise to anybody. I mean, he's spent to date nearly $400 million. And it's amazing to me that that doesn't concern a lot of people who are top brass within both political parties. But they've kind of allowed that to happen, and we'll have conversations about that. But I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the Harvey Weinstein trial. They're currently deliberating. There's a thought that there's going to be a hung jury or he's going to be acquitted. I want to have some back and forth about that. And there were a couple other things that I put in my feed this morning that I wanted to touch on. I didn't see any comments on. Oh, the Boy Scouts of America filed bankruptcy protection. A lot of lawsuits have been filed because of sexual misconduct, sexual assault within the BSA, and they have a strategy behind that. Back to the Harvey Weinstein thing, you now have a group of prominent political folk, including Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, who is now part of some sort of a collective that is evaluating sexual abuse or sexual misconduct within politics. I think that that's hilarious, but we'll have a conversation about that. And I think that may pretty much cover. Oh, and they are, as a result of the Netflix series Who Killed Malcolm X, they're reopening that up. I'm going to try to get in the feed, but if I don't get in the feed and you have a comment that you want me to address, please take the time to call in 908-481-5499, and I'll address the comment there. It's difficult, doing the show and trying to be in the feed and doing the show and that kind of stuff. So I would ask you guys to participate that way. And the other way you can participate is hit the share button. So one of the things that I want to begin, I guess, every show with now is playing, which I just think is critical to begin every show, is the small snippet of a speech that Malcolm gave, and they played it at the end of that documentary or miniseries, Who Killed Malcolm X. So I'm going to play that, and that'll be kind of like, you remember when you were in school And every day before school started, well, I'm 56, be 57 in a couple months, and you stood up and you pledge allegiance, you pledge allegiance to the flag, right? So that was the beginning of the day. That was supposed to set the tone of your day in school. So I kind of want this to be the thing that sets the tone at the beginning of the show. And again, this is my suggestion, so I'm playing it. If you guys have other ones, please submit them, and they will be on the table for consideration. But here we go.
There's only one way to be independent. There's only one way to be free. It's not something that someone gives to you. It's something that you take. Nobody can give you independence. Nobody can give you freedom. Nobody can give you equality or justice or anything. If you're a man, you take it. If you can't take it, you don't deserve it. Nobody can give it to you. I'm for anybody who's for freedom. I'm for anybody who's for justice. I'm for anybody who's for equality. I'm not for anybody who tells me to sit around and wait for mine.
So I want to say that is the baseline. That's where we all are, that we're for anybody who is for freedom, we're for anybody who is for justice, we're for anybody who is for equality, and we're not for anybody who tells us that we have to sit and wait for hours. And that if you want freedom, you have to take it. Nobody's going to give it to you. So if that's the baseline, if we're starting from there, then I think that everything is all well and good. So I want to start by talking about an event that I saw on Facebook yesterday in the city of Newark. There was an event, I'm imagining that it was probably held at the Robert Street Hotel. It was a group of primarily black folk, and Mayor Baraka assembled them to discuss buying property in Newark, right? Investing in property in your own community. And one of the things that, I found it disturbing, right? And I found it disturbing because of how it was done and because of the history, not only of this administration, but because of the history, quite frankly, of foundational black Americans in Newark and in the surrounding areas. So as I watched this, you had folks, firstly, a lot of them, I would dare say, came to eat, right? So there was food that was provided, and whenever there's food, you have people who show up for food. And so that was concerning to me. But outside of that, you had people with cameras, moving through the room and talking about the level of success that had been achieved. Again, I'm going to say the level of success that had been achieved as a result of having these people in the room. So I want to just kind of talk about that and talk about optics and talk about emotionalizing events without any real outcome. Because we can look at countless times now with this particular mayor where there have been crowds and crowds of people, and it looked fantastic. So let's start with the crowds of people who marched down to the port. That was a spectacular event, was it not? I mean, spectacular. He had his baseball cap on. You had members of the FOI there with their bow ties on. You had droves of people behind him. You had, high angle shots. I mean, you had all of it. You had all the drama. And it was a dud. But it grabbed headlines. It grabbed emotion. People said, go ahead, Mayor, do it. And what I'm going to ask you is, what was the outcome? What was the measurable outcome of that theatrical performance that took place then? Zero. So let's look at another one. What I refer to as the Valentine's Day Massacre. You guys remember that, right? They had lines of people around the block, the City Hall. You had cameras out there, you had news reporters out there, you had the mayor, and you had all of his trumpeteers. And what did they say? Once again, great job, Mayor. We're with you, Mayor. Oh, this is wonderful, Mayor. What was the outcome? See, we have to stop emotionalizing at some point, and we have to say, what is the outcome? So I will concede that Mayor Ras J. Baraka is brilliant at stagecraft. I will concede that Mayor Baraka is brilliant at imitating the cadence of a Southern Baptist preacher. I will concede that Mayor Ras J. Baraka is a fantastical ear hustler. What I won't concede, because data proves it out, is that he effectuates change, transformative change. There is no transformative change. There is this emotionalizing of things. There's this emotionalizing of him. There is this desire to embrace him and this hope that there's going to be some level of improvement somewhere. But time after time after time, whether you talk about the NAN Center, which is a complete failure, you talk about these centers of hope, which haven't produced any transformative change. We can keep going. We can talk about the idea of cranes in the air, cranes in the air, cranes in the air everywhere during the last campaign. Ride through these neighborhoods. They're still filthy. Services are still poor. But you have this one side that is hoping against hope that somehow he comes around, and in the middle of that, people are suffering. And so now back to yesterday. I'm just trying to paint the picture for you. So these same trumpeteers, these same low bar, low expectation people, these Negro whisperers and slave catchers who took to Facebook Live yesterday to once again try to convince you that an event that Mayor Ras J. Baraka put together was a success. So if we were to say that, was he successful at getting that number of people out to have free food at the Robert Treat Hotel? I would give you that, right? But I would dare say, if I were to have an event and say that I was going to have some free bacon and sausage and eggs and pancakes and waffles and fresh fruit and all those kinds of things, then I could probably pack a place too. But doing it under the auspices of effectuating change, doing it under the auspices of empowering people, doing it under the auspices of having the acumen to understand what it really takes to buy back Newark. That's where the ear hustling part of Ras J. Baraka comes in. You see, that's where the shuck and jive guy, the guy who has the cadence of a Southern Baptist preacher comes in, right? And so he's able to, with his silver tongue and his beautiful poetic cadence, get people to somehow emotionalize the moment without transforming themselves and realizing that nothing is going to fundamentally change in their lives because it hasn't happened before and it won't happen in the future because at the end of the day, that's not what he does. So those are the things that Mayor Ras J. Baraka does. So on to yesterday's event. What was the criteria for the people who entered into the event? Because if you're talking to them about purchasing homes, becoming developers, there's some baseline criteria that needs to exist. That's kind of like having a seminar for people going into med school, right? But none of those people have any formal education beyond grade school. So the idea, there's this big chasm between grade school, college, and med school. And so to have people who have not completed grade school sit in these seminars about getting into med school, right, the criteria doesn't exist. So you would want to have people who have achieved a certain level, and so now you're talking to them about moving to that next level of med school. So here you had people who bad credit, no business acumen, no access to capital, no access to contractors, no skill, just an array, a hodgepodge of folks, and you emotionalize them about being homeowners, being developers, don't understand the idea of capital stacks. They don't have any of that. But you had a room of people who were grubbing down on some bacon and some sausage and some eggs and some pancakes and fresh fruit and whatever. And you had the Negro whisperers or the slave catchers going around with cameras saying, this was a fantastic event. And I'm saying to you, just like the Valentine's Day massacre, or probably even worse with these people. Some of them, most of them probably good and well-intended, right? Wanting to come and wanting to figure out how to escape the poverty, the systemic poverty that is keeping them down, the poverty that is keeping them down because these political folk have not had the political will to effectuate any meaningful change in their lives. So the life that they're living now, all of these folks who were down there, a lot of whom are struggling to figure out how to pay bills, can't, get stuff together, they're behind in credit card payments and all these kinds of things. Their current circumstances are a direct result of folks like Ras J. Baraka, the council, the former mayors, even all the way up the ladder to the governor and move to Washington, right? All of that. So now you pile them in a room, you stuff their faces with bacon and sausage and eggs and pancakes and French toast and fresh fruit and whatever else, and you tell them that, hey, look, you can achieve your greatest and wildest dreams of being a developer just by showing up here and showing a level of commitment. Nothing could be further from the truth. So, what I predict, once again, he'll grab some headlines from yesterday's event, but as with everything else, it will fall flat. See, when you put an event together like that, because he didn't have to do that, right? What he could have done, there are organizations that are already in place within Essex County and all over, that he could have plugged into and lent his voice to as mayor and help those organizations that are already in place and could have, directed people there, right? But that's not what he did, because he wanted to be center stage. He wanted to, create the optics of doing something amazing. I asked the question, what is your projected outcome? I asked the same question, if you guys recall, during the Valentine's Day massacre. I said, okay, you guys doing all this stuff, you're lining these people up around the block, you're talking about how amazing it's gonna be. What are your projections? Like, what would you consider to be successful in terms of the success rate? So if you had 500 people show up, is the success rate 10%? Is it 5% of those 500 people that showed up? Is it 2%? What is the success rate? Or is just the success that you held an event and that you captured headlines and that you emotionalized people, gave them false hope? Is that the success? Or are you looking and saying, you know what? We're going to put this event together with the hope, based on this data, of achieving this goal. And then what is that goal? So, at that event, this is what I believe occurred. Just like back in, I guess it was 2002, Ras Baraka, as he was trying to rise politically, took advantage through his hip hop coalition of youth, and then leveraged them in a mayoral race to get Mayor Sharp James reelected over Cory Booker, because that's what he did. And then continue his rise in political affluence, right, by using different segments of the community, by emotionalizing them. So whether it was on the street with the bullhorn, stopping traffic on Broad and Market. I mean, I want you to understand, like, just kind of go back through your mental flip book of all of the different things that he did, right? And no transformative change occurred in any instance. It was him understanding how to use you emotionally, right? Probably a fine student of the Willie Lynch letter and Making of a Slave, in reading and understanding the condition of black folk, right? How we've been socially engineered and conditioned, and how to take advantage of that. And so he's, like I said, he's been masterful at doing it, but there's been no transformative change. If you look at the poverty rate in Newark, no change. If you look at the underemployment rate, no change. If you look at the jobless rate, no change. None under this mayor. If you look at the tale of two cities, though, and the gentrification which is upon every resident in the city of Newark, that's there. If you look at the unaffordable housing, well, that exists. If you look at the war that has been waged against the citizenry in Newark, well, that's there. But none of the other things are there. But I want to get back to yesterday's event. So, no measurable goals, right? Just an event of people who were eating free, and what he did was he took advantage of them by videotaping, and I'm sure those images are going to appear on some campaign literature, right? So they got a free meal, and he's going to, in turn, get to use their likeness to talk about some other event that he put together. But here's the real thing that I think that he did yesterday, and how he used those black folks. Most of them not even aware of how they're going to be used. But there is a constant struggle, whether you know it or not, within the city of Newark, between the Hispanic electeds and the black electeds. And the Hispanics are winning, right? So they have all the power. They have the economic power, and they have the political power, right? The black electeds have the political seats, but not the economic and political power. but they've been able to manipulate black folk and continue to come out and to support them because there's this appearance when when black folk look down at City Hall and they see, oh, there's a black mayor, and they see that there's a predominantly black council. But those people are operating against the interests of the black community every day. But the community, at least up until now, is content with just seeing those black faces, which is why I say we have to not worry about black faces that don't have black voices, because our circumstances are not improving. And again, I would just dare anybody to bring me data that suggests that, again, that the underemployment rate has improved, that the jobless rate has improved, that the that education has improved, that the poverty scale has improved. They haven't. And so those folks are just there, and again, based on emotionalizing that we have black people who are down there is where we're happy. But what occurred at this event, and what I thought was really insidious as I looked at it, was Ras Baraka wanted to be able to say to the Hispanic contingent that I could still herd black folk in large numbers. So before you come for me, before these whispers of Teresa Ruiz being the first Hispanic mayor of the city of Newark, and where Aníbal Ramos might be trying to, make some additional inroads, because we know in 2014 he ran for mayor unsuccessfully, right? So we know that that's what they want to do. And then for me, having sat in rooms, right, for years, knowing exactly how they think about him, that they don't revere his intellect. They don't revere his intellect. They don't look at him as a guy who is palatable to get along with. They tolerate him, and they tolerate him in large part because he's able to create these theatrical performances. So he's able to threaten them by saying, I can get a bunch of black folks to stop traffic on Broad Market and raise hell. I can line up a bunch of black folks to march down to the port, even though they're not going to get anything, but I can get them to do that. I can whip a whole bunch of black folks up in a frenzy over a Board of Education issue, and then reverse my course on it with no recourse from them. I can do those things, and I'll show you now. I can, even after a failed Valentine's Day event of $1,000 a lot, housing or a development project, I can do that again, and I can bring hundreds and hundreds of black folks down to a room to sit here and show a sign of force. So it wasn't about those people developing property in the city of Newark, because they won't. I'm gonna, I'll put a stack of coins on the desk here against anybody who wants to challenge me, but you're probably gonna have less than 0.25%, if that, of people who get through the first door or two in whatever process they put together, and then even a smaller percentage of those people who are actually able to do something. But he already knows that. He already knows that, because he already knows the human capital that exists there, right? So there has not been an investment in the human capital. Folks lack the skill set. They lack the access to financial capital. They lacked access to networks to be able to work and do any of these projects, right? But what they do have, and he knows this, is they are emotional creatures. And so for him, it was purely about showing force. It was showing numbers, not showing results. Because I would say to you, well, he got elected in 2014. Where this May, it'll be 2020, right? So that'd be 6 years. And what I would say is this: let's line up all of the black folk, because that's what he was. That's who he herded together at that event at the Robert Treat. So I'd say let's pull together all the black folk over a 6-year period, and let's see what work got done in City of Newark. Let's see who's developing what. Let's see who has access to what. And what I'm going to say to you is this: it is going to be abysmal. There are no results. Just more fanfare. And you got to be at some point tired of it. But I tell you, when I saw it, I was absolutely offended by it. It was no different. It was no different than when they show up to give out toys and then they take pictures of all of the people standing next to them as they're giving out the toys, to be able to use those pictures on social media to talk about how they're giving more stuff to poor people or people who are struggling. It's all offensive. So I found that to be very, very offensive. Now, what and I'm not in the feed again, but if anybody has any, and I'll go back and I'll read it later. But if you haven't seen it, the video, go check it out. But more importantly, ask what is the goal, and then how do we measure success? What is the goal, and how do we measure success? Now, this is the last piece of this, and I asked somebody about this. I said, well, what happens if folks acquire property or land, and they're unable, like many of those families who purchased those lots during that fateful Valentine's Day event? So what happens? They said, well, the city takes it back. I said, so the city, you pay the city for it, and then if you can't fulfill your obligation, then the city gets it back. And I said, well, what a racket that is, right? So I said, so that's kind of like it's predatory in a lot of respects, right? So you're preying on people's hopes and fears, fear of being impoverished, hope of coming out of poverty. You are, as an elected official who says that you have the power to do certain kinds of things, based on that level of influence and affluence, you are able to convince people to come to an event, and then you sell that event to them, and you have them go in their pockets with their hard-earned money to pay the city for this property, and then it doesn't get developed, and then you're able to take the property back. So you get their money, and then you get the property back. I wonder what percentage of people will wind up having to forfeit their property if they get through the first whatever stage there is of acquiring it, for not being able to fulfill it. And I wonder if that is part of some overall plan, right? That this property is sitting there not producing any revenue. But you know what? If I go out as a cheerleader and I convince a bunch of people to go and invest in this, hey, guess what? We win either way, right? If they develop it, they develop it. If they don't, it comes back to us, but we made a little bit of money on the side. And then, not to mention, and I'm sure, because I didn't listen to the entire thing, but I'm sure the mayor didn't talk about this aspect of development for small businesses, black businesses in particular, black developers. If you go to Fornos, or you go to Chateau Spain, or you go to a number of these other places where these politicians eat, you'll see whether it's John Sharp James or MacIver or Joe McCullum or the rest of them sitting down with these developers. Now, they won't tell you, but you already know that what I'm getting ready to tell you is true, right? That they have to pay to play. That piece of property that you want to get from the city, so even though you went and had your free breakfast over here at the Robert Treat and shoved free sausage and bacon and eggs down, and the mayor got up and spoke like that Baptist preacher I talked to you guys about just a little while ago, you still have to now come here, and there has to be some other negotiation that's off the record. And they're not talking about that. But we know it happens. And so that puts them at an even further disadvantage. So I'm telling you, I want to know, because you put it up on Facebook. You patted yourself on the back, and all of your minions patted you on the back too. I want to know, what is the projected goal by which you will measure success? How many of those people do you anticipate, based on a cursory view, will actually be able to acquire and successfully develop and hold on to their property? So you got the headlines. You got to use their likeness in your political pieces, right? You got to, ride in on your chariot that you're doing something for Newark. But let's see, will it really be something? Or will it be a bust, like the march down to the port? Will it be a bust, like the Valentine's Day massacre? Will it be a bust, like the assault on schools and the superintendent of schools, when in fact after you did that, you aligned yourself with Chris Cerf, and now you're silent and you're aligned with all of the charter school people? Will it all be a bust? So we'll see. Anyway, the Harvey Weinstein thing. And I have a clip that I want to play before we get into it. It's a rather long clip, but I'm going to play it and then we'll talk about it. Here we go.
It's titled My Encounter with Harvey Weinstein and What It Tells Us. Louise Godbold, it's great to have you back. The first time we had you on talking about your experience and also focusing on trauma. And today that's what we want to focus on. This issue of trauma and how trauma victims respond. We just talked to Clara Chan about Jessica Mann's testimony and how she broke down as she was being questioned by the Weinstein attorneys, having a kind of anxiety attack, and the judge had to end the case at that point, just to give her space and then move on. Talk about that response.
Well, it's hardly surprising, is it? Because unfortunately, the way that sexual assault cases are prosecuted in the criminal justice system, it's traumatizing from the get-go. Having to tell your story multiple times. The neurons in your brain, they fire when you're remembering something in the same way as if you're actually experiencing it. And of course, we know the difference. We know the difference between reality and remembering, but the body is going to react as if you were still under that same threat. You're still going to have that release of stress hormones. And over a long period of time, that is really detrimental to your health. And so if you think about it, if your most frazzled moment, that's what's being repeated again and again and again. And the abuse that Jessica suffered at the hands of Harvey, the poor girl, my heart really went out to her. So what you saw in the witness box was really a culmination of a series of re-traumatizing experiences. I know a couple of the people who've testified in the trial, and of course they didn't sleep the night before. And then on top of all that, you have a hostile defense team who are throwing at you all of the worst possible motivations for your behavior and all of the names that some horrible voice in your own head has actually condemned you with.
You do not like the term accusers, Louise. Explain why.
Well, it just makes us sound like a bunch of harridans, standing around pointing bony fingers. The truth is that if we were reporting something like having our purse snatched, we wouldn't be called the purse snatch accusers. It seems to be a different standard when we're talking about sexual assault, and especially when we're talking about rich and famous men who everyone is scared of.
And if you can talk about the approach of the Weinstein lawyers and the fact that Harvey Weinstein will not be testifying.
I'm not a legal specialist, so I can't really say what that means and ascribe any significance to that one way or the other.
Well, let me ask you a question more specifically. The Weinstein defense is pointing to the fact that these women kept in touch with Harvey Weinstein after their alleged attacks in an effort to discredit them. Talk about that, certainly in the case of Jessica Mann and others.
I think it's really egregious, the multiple motivations that people are ascribing to victims' behaviors. But here's what makes sense, and this is not speculation, this is from talking to survivors, Harvey survivors. When the worst has happened, you try and mitigate the damage. And Harvey held the key to the kingdom, and you do not want to have suffered sexual assault and then not be able to succeed in your chosen career. So it makes sense that there's nothing you can do. The worst has happened. You will try and make nice just to make sure that you don't lose everything. And from a trauma perspective, there's two other factors I'd like to talk about. One is the fourth survival response, which is rarely mentioned. We have fight and flight and freeze, but there's also appease. And in women, we produce oxytocin, which is the tend and befriend or love hormone under toxic stress. In fact, they did a study with abused teenage girls and found that they had a much higher level of oxytocin, which was counterintuitive to what we had always known about trauma and toxic stress. So the effect of that oxytocin in your body, which is the same thing that gets released when a woman gives birth or during orgasm, is to bond you. And we call that trauma bonding, or you may know it as the Stockholm Syndrome.
There's only one way to be independent. There's only one way to be free. It's not something that someone gives to you. It's something that you take. Nobody can give you independence. Nobody can give you freedom. Nobody can give you equality or justice or anything. If you're a man, you take it. If you can't take it, you don't deserve it. Nobody can give it to you. I'm for anybody who's for freedom. I'm for anybody who's for justice. I'm for anybody who's for equality. I'm not for anybody who tells me to sit around and wait for mine.
Now, the significance of that is, well, firstly, you know, I find it disturbing that there are pundits who believe that, you know, he's going to be acquitted or that there's going to be a hung jury. But we'll wait and see. But I want to play that clip for you because I wanted you to have a deep understanding, at least from this person, of what women go through. And probably not just women, but folks who are abused, but in this case, women, because she was talking about hormones and things that are specific to women and how they react as a result of trauma. And we did a show 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. We were talking about not judging women based on when they come out and how they manage their pain, right? So 2 years ago, a year and a half ago now, in the city of Newark, we were having conversations about sexual abuse, sexual misconduct, and I'm going to tell you that I know Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, I know for a fact that she had heard the rumors of the, not just misconduct, but illegal behavior, right? The abusive behavior, the criminal behavior, the culture, not just in Newark, but predominantly in Newark, but all throughout, in Irvington, in Orange. And then you had Councilwoman Gail Cheneyfield Jenkins, who came out and said, you know what? We need to pass legislation. We need to deal with this because it is rampant. We hear about it. The hallways, I mean, it's just like an open secret. And nobody's dealing with it. And these women are just having to succumb to it. And we see it now rising into all facets of our government. Phil Murphy's campaign riddled with it. Other mayors and elected officials having to resign across the state. The current president of the United States saying that he grabbed women by their genitals. The guy who's buying his way onto the debate stage tomorrow, having misogynistic things to say. I mean, this is just kind of where we are, right? But here in New Jersey, right, in the greater Newark area, where there was open conversation about how to deal with it and to create legislation around it, the lieutenant governor was silent. Silent. Didn't open her mouth. So see, this is where I say again, guys, that so it's pomp and circumstance. It's theatrics. Because there was real opportunity to bring about some change. Now it's all about, covering your ass. So it says, the headline was, Mistreatment of Women in New Jersey Politics. Weinberg's group holds first hearing. So, February 12th, 2020, that's when you first found out. So nobody knew anything about it. So you had to create this thing now. But see, I want you to understand, so the governor is under fire right now. Under enormous pressure right now. And so to give him cover, they want to create this group to hold hearings, to give the impression that they empathize and sympathize and care about these women who are brutalized on a regular basis, who are demeaned on a regular basis. But they don't care, because if they cared, they'd have done it before. If they cared, they would have spoken out. If they cared, they wouldn't have had to create a group. It's kind of like, to me, it's funny, right? Because it's kind of like the same people who don't give a damn about foundational Black Americans and don't give a damn about reparations. And so when you have the conversation with them, they say, oh, we'll convene a committee. We'll investigate it. We'll look into it. And say, well, wait a minute. It's a lot of data that already exists. It's all out there. You already know. Just do it. But they're going to convene a committee, and they held their first hearing. So it says, first hearing of work group on harassment, sexual assault, and misogyny in New Jersey politics took place February 11th. An ad hoc group looking into the treatment of women in New Jersey's politics heard Tuesday about lewd comments, groping, intimidation, and bullying, as well as promises of imminent reforms to improve the political culture in the state. Even before the work group on harassment, sexual assault, and misogyny in New Jersey politics began its first hearing, Governor Phil Murphy announced that he will be implementing changes in state government soon and apologized for any ways his 2017 gubernatorial campaign failed women. It's all about him. All about giving him cover. Right? So when this woman, or these women within his campaign were coming and saying, we got a problem, I'm being harassed, it's uncomfortable for me, they tried to sweep it under the rug, deny it. And what did Phil Murphy do with the guy? He transferred him, and I believe it was to Rutgers, right? Didn't send the documentation that indicated what had occurred within the campaign, just tried to move him off the radar so nobody would talk about it anymore. So this isn't sincere. And the reason I played the Weinstein piece for you is to understand the trauma. So when women come forward to say that this has happened to them, the trauma. And then I didn't understand first because when even during the Bill Cosby thing, they said, well, these women, they came back. I mean, why would a woman ever come back? If she was sexually assaulted, if she was raped, why would she come back? Well, this woman explained it. She said, well, if the worst thing had already happened and now your coping mechanism kicks in and you don't want to lose it all, so you've already lost that. So you feel powerless there. But that person holds the key to your professional and or political, in this case, future. Well, yeah, you're going to come back. Otherwise, you lose it all. And because those assholes know it, there's this mental and emotional abuse that continues that may lead to more physical abuse. And Phil Murphy, Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, they all know it. They all know it. And then none of these elected officials, none of them, because it was all about politics. And now whether you were supporting Gayle Cheney Field Jenkins for mayor or not, that's sidebar. The question that was on the table was, were these women being abused? And still are. And then what are you going to do to stand up about it? So they're not standing up for these women. They're standing up for Phil Murphy to try to get him reelected come next election cycle. But outside of the politicians not standing with Councilwoman Cheney Field Jenkins, women didn't stand with Councilwoman Cheney Field Jenkins. Women didn't stand up and say, you know what, we hear these things too. We know because it's happening to my daughter, my granddaughter, my niece, my cousin, my sister. And so now politics gets in the way. And so Weinberg's group holds a first hearing around sexual assault and misogyny in New Jersey politics. Why does Weinberg's group have to stand up for you and your family and your neighbor and your friend. Anyway, I had to play that because it was very, very, very disturbing to me. The other thing, let me see. I'm gonna try to get into the feed for a quick second, if I can, guys. Because I'd like to know what you guys are saying about any of this, if you're speaking about it at all. So give me 2 seconds.
You will try
Turn that down. Oh, so the comments that I'm reading are about the land thing. So Shakima says he didn't even get the residents employed by 2020. So why would he succeed in making residents property owners? I agree. And then what happened to that? This is another one, right? So 2020, right? I forgot how many, but it was some catchy thing, right? Whether it was 2020 residents by 2020. What are the final numbers? I don't see, because if he had succeeded, it would have been a huge headline. Just like when they, take photo ops, ribbon cuttings, right, to take credit, to cheese in front of the camera. If he had succeeded at that, or any of the other things that he got initial big headlines about, he would have gotten bigger headlines having succeeded. So somebody else says, this makes me think about African American women and girls had to endure with white men during slavery. Some decided it was an honor to be selected by the master. Ugh. And, so you're talking about the Harvey Weinstein letter, or the assessment of the pain that women go through. Shakima says, back to the event at the Robert Treat, people were there for the food, definitely more so than being there to get empowered to make a change. So here's the other question I would ask about these people. So you had, I don't know, it looked like it was a nice crowd, right? It was well over 1,000 people, it seemed. If you got that number of black folks in Newark who could show up, why do the streets look the way they do? Why are the schools the way they are? Why is the government the way that it is? If you can get that number of people mobilized. See, I got an answer. Because they're not mobilized for real change. They were mobilized and they were incentivized by something else. I want you to understand that. If you get that number of people and you're talking about transformative change, you could pack the room, but no transformative change occurs. That's not why they were there. A large herd of 200 sheep is infected. Right, got a couple more comments in here. So I'm going to get on now and leave that alone. You guys can go back and you can figure it out. You can figure it out for yourself. I just, like I said, I was offended when I saw it, right? And I'm sensitive about it now because I've seen that performance over and over and over again. And so when I see it, when it's coming, I'm like, yeah, that's him. That's him. And it's kind of like when Bloomberg says about Donald Trump, he's a carnival barking clown, right? And so when you hear him bark enough times, you go, oh, that's it. It's just noise. So it's just noise. But anyway, I'm going to play, I got another, on on the Bloomberg, here's a video. It's like a composite of some things that I want to play about Michael Bloomberg. And so we're going to start off by giving you this image, and then I'll play the video. And then we'll get into a discussion about him, the election, the debate tomorrow, and anything else you want to talk about. Here we go.
You say that you're a big fan of Donald Trump.
I'm a friend of Donald Trump's. He's a New York icon.
actually been-
Enormous cohort of black and Latino males, aged, let's say, 16 to 25, that don't have jobs, don't have any prospects, don't know how to find jobs, don't know what their skill sets are, don't know how to behave in the workplace where they have to work collaboratively.
One of the unintended consequences is people say, oh my God, you are arresting kids for marijuana. They're all minorities. Yes, that's true. Why? Because we put all the cops in the minority neighborhoods. Yes, that's true. Why do we do it? Because that's where all the crime is.
Mayor Bloomberg says putting fingerprints on Social Security cards would help control the nation's borders and give employers a way to check whether potential hires are legal citizens.
The companies could just run it through a computer, and if you're an undocumented illegal, they just don't give you the job. And you're not going to come here if you can't get a job.
He's also pushing back against the Washington Post piece, detailing allegations around what Bloomberg has said and about his workplace culture of sexual harassment and degradation.
Some people say, well, taxes are regressive, but in this case, yes, they are. That's the good thing about them, because the problem is in people that don't have a lot of money. And so higher taxes should have a bigger impact on their behavior and how they deal with themselves. So I listen to people saying, oh, we don't want to tax the poor. Well, we want the poor to live longer.
So did I run through everything there? Insane racism, sexual harassment allegations too, and just a little wrinkle to his authoritarian billionaire status, the paternalism, nanny state, surveillance-obsessed nature that he has. Just something a little bit different, like a little bit spicy alternative to Trump's many flaws, arguing that regressive taxes are a good thing to save poor people from themselves, punishing them for drinking soda. Mike Bloomberg is the worst kind of politician. He's an elitist, out-of-touch egomaniac. He's an economic conservative, so he wants, low taxes, no regulation on Wall Street or big industry, but is anti-freedom on the social end, wants to control what soda you drink. He illegally monitored Muslims and didn't care about their freedom in New York. He illegally, as ruled by a court, stopped and frisked Black and brown New Yorkers at a crazy rate, and then refused to stop until he was legally forced to do so, despite the unconstitutional practice there having a 3% conviction rate. 3%! Listen to one of the victims of his dystopian cruelty.
I've been taken in a lot of times because if you're stopping me, I'm gonna want to know why. And that's when you could hear a change in their tone. They start to get a little more aggressive, and you feel threatened. They were like, if you're gonna talk back, we're gonna take you in. If you're gonna ask questions, we're gonna take you in. You sit in a precinct for I would say 8-9 hours with a bunch of people you don't know. They put the cuffs on really tight, and it stinks, and you don't get fed. All this time, y'all know I'm innocent. They just kept me there till 4 in the morning and then let me out the back door. I would say it was happening at least 4 or 5 times in a month. Because I was always outside, and I was always outside late. So if you're with a lot of people, you're a suspect automatically.
He ruined countless lives in New York, so every time you hear a vote blue no matter who retort when you're talking about Republican Mike Bloomberg, yes, Republican Mike Bloomberg running for the Democratic nomination, when they say kids in cages, remember that Bloomberg also put kids in cages, and no, it's not the same thing as Hillary Clinton. Trump and Clinton were way further apart than Bloomberg and Trump. She was a better candidate despite all of her flaws. I know that's crazy to say. She would have been better than Bloomberg. a Republican, again, I will remind you, for most of his life. So, like, the Democrats see Trump and they go, oh, we want our own racist rich guy, you know, with a history of horrific behavior. That's the end of our democracy right there. When you have just two horrible right-wing plutocrats on either side, we're done. I'm not joking. Like, I'll leave it, though, to David Dayen, who is a great contributor to TYT. He's on the main show sometimes, and he wrote about Bloomberg as the Democrats' Trump in the magazine The American Prospect. Michael Bloomberg won his first term as New York City mayor as a Republican. He was a featured speaker at the Republican National Convention in New York in 2004, endorsing George W. Bush and the war on terrorism. He has supported numerous Republican candidates for office with tens of millions of dollars, including Scott Brown over Elizabeth Warren. He supported the state Republican Party in New York to keep them from attacking him over his party switch to independent while mayor. Today, he claims to be a liberal Democrat in favor of gun safety and climate preservation. He opposed minimum wage increases before and supports them now. The pattern is of someone choosing sides and deploying money to win favor purely for political expediency. There's no core there, just like Trump, which is scary. It means only money and power is what he cares about, while also having racist tendencies like Trump. David goes on to talk about, you know, how Bloomberg violently cracked down on the Occupy protesters, lied about reducing stop and frisk when he actually expanded it, and of course more. But here is the cherry on top of the scariness of a Bloomberg candidacy. In 2009, Bloomberg successfully got city law changed to run for a third term, something Rudy Giuliani suggested after 9/11, but couldn't himself pull off. Trump has mused about a third term as well. To paraphrase his ubiquitous campaign slogan, Mike got it done. By the way, the people supporting Mike Bloomberg are the same people that care about institutions. Perhaps they'd care that Bloomberg changed laws to run for a third term. Might be a little scary if you are consistent in your principles. He got this done in part by seeding nonprofit charities that then supported the term limit change with $60 million through his philanthropic fund. This is a persistent pattern in Bloomberg's political life, buying off anyone who can be bought for their support or their silence. As journalist Blake Zeff documents, Bloomberg paid off pastors helpful to his mayoral candidacies, paid off members of Congress who are now backing him with millions in donations, and paid off mayors who have endorsed him with $350 million in city grant programs that filled budget holes. Make no mistake, guys, if Bloomberg is the Democratic nominee, this democracy's done. It's a failed experiment. It's finished. It's been like on its last breath for a while, but this would cement it. No left-wing opposition to this horrific presidency, just oligarchy, just liberals who decided because they were, to give the keys to a racist paternalist out of a dystopian novel who's eerily similar to the wannabe autocrat in power, but just doesn't do the mean tweets, all because those liberals were acting out of fear of that autocrat. And what's even more likely is that Bloomberg would lose. How is that soda ban going to play in the Midwest? How is his pro-Wall Street positions going to play? I can't even pretend to be neutral here. We have to stop Mike Bloomberg at all costs.
So, listen, here is where I am on this, and we've talked about this when Kevin's been on the show and Diane's been on the show. There is a line, and I scratched my head when I heard her say that. Like, Mike Bloomberg will not win a general election. And I think they understand that. I think they're clear on it. And I think Mike Bloomberg realizes that he won't win a general election. And I think that this is a business deal. In as much as he may have some personal issues with Donald Trump, what folks like that know how to do is take care of business. And so as I'm thinking, like literally, it was probably maybe 3 o'clock this morning where it dawned on me. And I had to look at the chessboard again to try to understand how the pieces are being developed. And so if I go back and always start from the premise that foundational Black Americans are here to be the commodity to wealth and power to corporation white supremacy, so always start from there. And then say that the 99% are never intended in this capitalistic structure, and Dr. King spoke about it, are never intended to share in the prosperity of this nation, right? But that the wealthy are always going to feed on those 99%. So if that is the construct, I'm saying to myself, well, okay, if Bloomberg is operating within that, then what's really happening? What is the end game? Because the end game's not to, not to relinquish power, economic or political, to foundational Black Americans. The goal, the end game, is not to relinquish economic and political power to poor people. So that was Dr. King's fight, right? So what is Bloomberg's objective? So if it's to maintain control over the levers of power, economic and political, how does he do that if he knows he can't win? Because he can't win. Even if they rig the primary, he can't win the general election. So how do they get it done? How does he maintain control over the levers of economic and political power? Not having the current Democratic frontrunner be the nominee and possibly win is how you maintain control over the levers of economic and political power. Because that progressive wing is talking about tearing it all down. They're talking about disrupting the entire thing. They're talking about breaking the matrix. And so Bloomberg's intent isn't to do that. If you listen to, much like Joe Biden, Joe Biden said, what? I want to return America to normalcy, right? He said, nothing is going to fundamentally change. I'm telling you, like 3 o'clock in the morning, like the bells just started going off in my head. And I said, well, listen to Bloomberg. What does he say? That he's a uniter, that he's going to unite people. Well, what is there to unite around? Poverty? Racism? Bigotry? Those things still exist. Right? There's no proposed prescription for those things. So what are we uniting around? And so, like she said, the only difference between the two of them is Donald Trump says, look, I'm not going to pretend to you that I'm not a racist. I'm not going to pretend to you that I'm not crass. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be in your face with it. I'm going to tweet. I'm going to, bully people. I'm going to be straight up with it, right? And that's so. And when you hear people talk about how Donald Trump wasn't allowed in certain circles because he was like the rich guy who was not refined, right? Who would get mustard on his tie and have his shirt tails hanging out. That was that guy, right? He didn't know how to play the part. The Bloomberg knows how to play the part, so he's not going to send out racist tweets, and he's not going to do that stuff. He makes sure that his, tails are tucked in and that he's got no mustard stain on his collar. You won't catch him eating Taco Bell on an airplane and that kind of stuff, right? So he's not a normal guy. Donald Trump's like a normal kind of weird guy, right? Who's gonna hang out at clubs, party with, all of the hip hop guys that he partied with back in the day, right? Hang out with Mike Tyson, grab women by their, genitals, and that's him, right? And I'm sure that the elites looked at him and just kind of cringed about, how crass he was and is. But Mike Bloomberg is no different. No different. Ran the same circles, just more refined. But in the end, that circle that I'm saying he ran in and runs in is controlling the levers of economic and political power. And he wasn't interested in relinquishing it then. So he's certainly not interested in relinquishing it now. And you get to see in its full glory what it means to be in control of the political and economic levers of power. That this guy single-handedly used his money and spread it across all of these different areas as a philanthropist. So all of these different organizations, some progressive, some not, right? Some, like the one guy, Tim Scott, that he supported. So supporting people on both sides. Controlling a true puppeteer controls the left and the right arm, right? You don't just control the left arm. You control the left and the right arm, the left and the right foot and leg. And so Mike Bloomberg, we see now, controls all of it and is pulling on each of those strings right now. But the string that he can't pull on, he can't figure out how to do this, no matter how effective you think your slave catchers are, your Negro whisperers are. The thing that you cannot do at some point is convince a person who's hungry that they're really not hungry. Convince a person who's homeless that they're really not homeless. Convince a person who's got to work 2 jobs and still can't make ends meet to believe that they're prosperous. They're having problems doing that. It's interesting. On the show, we talk about a uprising in the servants' quarters. I was on Springfield Avenue in Irvington yesterday doing some business with some folks. And a gentleman came in and, I said, hey, man, how you doing? He said, man, I'm tired. He said, I got off one job, go home and rest, and I got to go to my other job. And I said, yeah, it's crazy. He said, man, it's really crazy. He said, something's got to change. This thing is about to break. And I said, what do you mean? He said, the pressure. He said, it's all about to break. And I said, and I gave him a card, and I said, you should tune into the radio show. And I said, we call what's happening an uprising in the servants' quarters. And he fell out. And he said, that's exactly what it feels like. And see, no matter how much money Mike Bloomberg, and so here's the other beautiful thing. So I'm actually excited. I got to tell you. I'm excited that he's going to be on a debate stage. Because I think, what is the word? The antithesis. When you are trying to describe something and you can't quite put your finger on it, you can't create it in a tangible way for people to see it, and so they don't really get it. People are going to get it tomorrow night. They're going to get it. And, why Biden, I'm not sure. Maybe Biden's just pissed at the way that they're kicking him to the curb. But why he's coming after Bloomberg when they're all part of the same team to try to destroy the progressive wing of the party. But you're going to see, like, right there in full display, in full regalia, in its full glory, you're going to see the battle of them and us. You're going to have a guy who's talking about him. his elite upbringing, his white privilege, his Republican past, and you're going to have the other guy who they're labeling a socialist. They're trying to falsely tie him to communism. But you're going to have both of those ideas, which I think is phenomenal. What I wish is that nobody else was on the stage. I wish that Amy was off the stage and that Elizabeth Warren was gone and Sleepy Joe Biden was removed from the stage. And I wish that they were all gone, and I wish that it was just those two. Because I think that that's where the country really is. It's divided. You've got the representatives of the 1%, and you've got the representatives of the 99%. And to be able to sit down and hash it out in a 2-hour discussion about how did we get here? How did we get to a state where you've got so many homeless people? How did we get to a state where you haven't seen wage increases in 4 decades? How do we get to a state where you're the richest country in the world and folks are concerned about whether they have enough to eat? How did we get to a space where you've got a presidential candidate that literally says that if you have prostate cancer, I think, or pancreatic cancer, whichever one he said, and you're 90 whatever years old, that we shouldn't even think about treating you, that we should simply say to you, you've lived a good life, there's nothing we can do for you, and just let you die. But if you were a younger person, because I guess, you've got more years to pay taxes and more years to contribute to this capitalistic way of thinking, that we should try to revive you so that you can continue to pay taxes and continue to be a viable member of society. And that you're just not a human being, but you're a commodity. Because that's all that said. When I don't know if you guys heard it, but this was Mike Bloomberg who said it. I mean, it was astonishing. And I'm saying to myself, oh my gosh, are people listening to this? So I would love to hear him defend that, because the only explanation that I got is that 95-year-old person has served their worth to him. That there's nothing else for them to contribute. That they should just ride off into the sunset. And their family, their loved ones who love and care for them. And you should just be okay with the fact that, we've gotten all we could get out of him or her. And that we should just send them back home and let them know that there's nothing we're going to do for them. But if the 30-year-old or 40-year-old had the same disease, that because we can project, because this is a business person now speaking, right? As a business person, as a marketing guy, you look at your customer base and you project revenue, right? So there's customer acquisition, and there's customer retention, and then there's a projected amount of revenue that you expect to be able to get from that customer. And it lets you know whether, from a business standpoint, whether it's worth doing business, right? So if it's going to cost me $100 to acquire a customer, and I can retain, and then, so $100 to acquire the customer. Customer retention costs me an additional $200 a year. And that's when, you get the emails, you get the whatever notifications, oh, thanks for being a customer, so $200 a year. But then I look and say, I'm gonna keep the customer. If I do that, on average, I keep my customer for 10 years. So if I'm spending $200 a year for 10 years, $2,000 plus the $100 customer acquisition cost. So that's $2,100. But in that 10 years, if I'm making $10,000 off that customer, that's a net positive for me. So Mike Bloomberg's thinking was, well, that customer is about to die of old age. So even if we go and invest in saving the customer's life, what the customer will pour back into the corporation in terms of taxes and other kinds of things, it doesn't balance out. So we may wind up spending, $100,000 to save his life. But if he dies within the next 2 years, he may only kick back, $2,000 in taxes or in contributions back into the corporation called America. So we lose on that particular customer. So let him go. And I wonder how many people were offended by that. I wonder how many people were offended by that. What else? There was a couple of other things that I wanted to. I think I spoke about the Boy Scouts of America, right? The Malcolm X documentary. If you haven't seen mini-series, I guess is what it's called, Who Killed Malcolm X. If you haven't seen it, you have to see it. We talked about it a little bit last week on the show. But like I said, as a result of that mini-series, they are reopening the case. And I'd like to know, I can't be in the feed, but I'd like to know what folks think about it. Do you think that it is worth reopening? What do you think will come out of it? I saw somebody in a feed yesterday post that even reopening it, that everybody's dead, right? So, what do you hope to accomplish? So, I think that if you see it, or if you know the story, everybody's not dead. There is one survivor who did jail time for a murder he didn't commit. And I think that exonerating him and rewriting history to accurately reflect that he is not a murderer, so that sometime in the future, when his grandchildren or great-grandchildren or great-great-grandchildren, see, because right now we have Ancestry.com, right? So we go back and we trace our ancestry. And so you can see, you're related to this one, and you're related to that one. And so what a tragedy it would be if history wasn't corrected in some 100 years from now, or 200 years from now, when somebody is tracing their lineage and they go back and they say, oh, this was my relative, my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. And they looking and say, oh, wow, he murdered El Haj, and so to be able to say, no, he didn't. He served time for some cowards who did it and didn't admit it. But your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was exonerated. And so here it is. I think that would be very, very important. So, I was excited about the fact that they decided to reopen it. I think also it's going to, it's going to expose some things that we've talked about on this show in terms of black folks, the black community. I think it's going to expose, when we talk about our inability to get ahead and how we have barbarians within the gates, that there are people who look like us, who are operating within our very midst, who are operating outside of our interests, right? It's no different. No different. And I think that it is timely that they're doing it because, again, when you look at what's happening on a national stage, the election stage, and you see that you have black folks who are operating outside of the interest. And the only interest is what? Economic and political power. That is it. Nothing else. Right? And that's what Malcolm said too. We got to get economic and political power. And so these folks caping and operating outside of those interests, intentionally undermining any group of productive and constructive black folks who are trying to seize economic and political power. You'll see it when the trial unfolds, because you're going to see people who operated as informants within the government, who operated as informants within specific political parties to help undermine any movements that were taking place in the black community, that the fall of black consciousness was not a happenstance, that it was well planned and well executed. And then I think that what we're going to see as it plays out is that it's still manifesting itself now, right? So the remnants of what they did then are still very evident now. I think that that's going to happen. So I'm very curious about what it's going to ultimately look like when it comes out. I'm trying to look through the feed again, guys, to see if there's anything within the feed that anybody wants to comment on. I don't see anything. Back to the, what is it, that virus called again? I don't remember the name of it, but it has the CDC, I think another plane, 14 people, I think I saw something about that, were taken from a plane and they were taken to the hospital. So I wish them all well. I wish them all health. Oh, somebody just sent this. This is New Jersey. And I guess I'll close with this. We got about 20 minutes. But I'll close with this. Somebody just sent this to me. This is out of all places, Bloomberg News. It says, New Jersey in worse shape than any other state, Senate boss says. New Jersey in worse shape than any other state, Senate boss says. And it's interesting. I met with a guy. Shameless plug. Any of you guys who are interested in coming to the campaign kickoff, if you don't know, now you know, I'm running for Congress in 10th Congressional District. I'm running against Donald M. Payne Jr. And we're holding a kickoff rally on March 14th from 5 to 7 at DLV Lounge on Bloomfield Avenue, 300 Bloomfield Avenue in Montclair. We are almost at capacity in terms of people who've inboxed me or texted me and said that they wanted to attend. So if you want to attend, please inbox me, text me, or in this feed indicate so that we can have a head count, because there is a capacity that he has. There's off-street parking that he owns, and we could take care of that. But while I was there talking to the owner, George, about having the event there, I ran into a guy who's moving to Pennsylvania, and I asked him why he's moving, and he said because he can't afford to stay in New Jersey anymore. So he's retired. He said, there's nothing here in New Jersey. Everything is screwed up. Those were his exact words. So he's moving to Pennsylvania. But it just reminded me of the headline. So headline again, New Jersey in worse shape than any other state, Senate boss says. New Jersey Senate president said credit rating companies maybe underestimating the severity of the state's financial strains by giving it the second lowest grade after Illinois. So we got the second lowest grade after Illinois, but he's saying that they may be overestimating us, that we may be actually worse than that. We're in worse shape than Illinois, he says. So there you go. As Steve Sweeney, a Democrat, said in an interview, we are not investing. Thank you. You're gonna. So I got people who inbox me that they're gonna attend. Cool. So I'll make sure that I contact you after the show. Thanks a lot. He says we are in worse shape than Illinois. Senator Stephen Sweeney, a Democrat, said in an interview. We are not investing in education. We are not investing in the areas that we want, because all the money is going to pensions and health care. The comments underscore the persistent fiscal pressure on New Jersey, a high-tax state contending with massive debts to employee pension funds after years of failing to set aside enough to cover the $212 billion of benefits that have been promised. New Jersey's retirement system had about $82 billion of assets in 2018, only 38% of what is needed to cover checks that are owed in the decades ahead. That's low. So there's a huge problem. I mean, I'm not going to go ahead and read this. I'm going to post it, but you guys should read it. But these are some of the issues, right? And nobody's having really honest conversations about how to deal with it. They're just kicking the can down the road. So I think this is Murphy who says, we're trying to address all of the above, get our pension system stable, crack the back of the property tax crisis, continuing to pursue tax fairness and equity and new sources that we think are reasonable, Murphy said. New Jersey is rated A3 by Moody's Investors Service, A by S&P Global Ratings, and A by Fitch Ratings. Those are the second lowest ratings for a U.S. state. So we're in trouble. We got problems. Call it go.
Yo, brother E, Darren Martin here, brother. How you doing?
Darren Martin, what's the word, man? Hey, Darren, how do we fix this pension issue?
Yeah, it's a huge issue. And I'm a union guy. And I think the biggest problem is that the one thing that Sweeney's not being honest about, I'm sure in that article, is that he's been part of the system of raping the pension for many years and using money as a slush fund. Him and other elected officials, Democrats, Republicans, they all rated it for many years. But now they want to try to fix the problem because they believe it's out of control. Of course, Eric, on the flip side, these people who work for these pensions deserve these pensions because they worked and they put the time and the blood, sweat, and tears. And does it need to have some kind of reform? Yeah, but that should have happened many years ago, Eric, while they was pulling money from it and using it for their own good, Sweeney included. So that's my problem with people like him.
Right.
Does it need to be reformed? Yes, it needs to be reformed, but it should have happened a long time ago. And now they're at a point, Eric, where it's going to hurt people by them doing it now. Meaning, so for instance, if you was a state worker and you're in that pension system, and let's say you put your 30 years on, your 25 years, and et cetera. Now they want to shortchange you. That's not fair.
So that's what I'm saying. So if you look, because I've listened to it all, right? And right now it is hurting a lot of taxpayers, right? Who are not benefiting from the pension system. Right.
You're absolutely correct.
And
right.
And a lot of them are saying, I'm going to bail because, I'm paying out the nose. I'm never going to receive any of this. I'm essentially compensating for mis and malfeasance of politicians, as you said, right? They were using it as a slush fund, and now I'm paying through it, and I'm paying just so that my fellow New Jerseyan who paid into the pension can get his or her money. That's the dynamic.
You know,
that's
Eric, you hit the nail on the head, brother.
Right, and so now, I mean, think about it. So now, if I'm struggling already, if we're in a state, Darren, where I'm struggling to make ends meet, and I'm paying into something that I'm paying for something that I never had any involvement in to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Never. I never. Like, so for instance, I'm never going to collect a pension. I've worked in private sector my whole life.
There you go.
Right. So me as a lifelong New Jerseyan, my tax dollars are paying. So if you're a union guy, that means you're going to collect a pension because you've been paying into it. So a piece of my money every time they take it is going to make sure to secure your pension and secure the pension for a bunch of other people. Meanwhile, I got to drive home to make sure that my lights didn't get turned off because I only put half on it this month. Right? That's crazy.
Well, I mean, the good thing about, I mean, one thing is just one point of clarification. Well, you didn't know it. Although I am a union guy, my pension is not with the state because my pension is something that's a part of my union and the board of trustees, and we have a Taft Hartley fund, so we have our own. But I do represent union members that are part of the state pension fund, a whole bunch of them.
Right.
And a lot of friends and family I know but you hit the nail directly on the head, and I would feel the same way if I was one of those people that's not going to collect, and I've been in the I've been in the private sector, not in the public sector like they are. And I'm not going to get a dime, and so I'm cutting my losses and getting out. So I'm not mad at them. I think they're absolutely right. But this all goes back so many years. Oh my gosh, it just goes back many years, Eric. Many years that both Republican and Democratic governors and administrations raided that pension fund. They used it for their own good. And now New Jersey, as we always talk about in the show, there is. Going to wind up being like some of the other states where they're going to go bankrupt if they don't do something. So now it's really at a breaking point where something has to be done. And it's going to, either way, it's going to hurt people. But it's already hurting people, as you said, unfortunately. Well, tough situation. Now, I heard you say earlier when you played, those are some good clips about Bloomberg. The one thing I disagree with you about, I believe, Eric, that I think Bloomberg believes he can win. I think he's arrogant enough to believe he can win. I believe he can. He really thinks he can win the general election. And the reason why I'm afraid to question it is because we have Trump, and nobody. I remember the night when the votes was coming in 2016. I'll never forget it because I was at a meeting, a union meeting at one of my nursing homes, and they all kept saying, "Mr. Martin, do you believe this? Trump wins this state, Trump wins this state, Trump wins this state," and it was like I couldn't believe it. I said, "How did this guy?" And so the long and short of it is, you can't count this guy out because of the apathy of that voters have, and our rush to we are sensitive about everything, man. We like pity parties, and we like to be sensitive, and we just forgive everybody for everything.
I wish Kevin Jenkins was on the show because he would attest to this. We were in the presidential suite at the Robert Treat Hotel when the returns were coming in the last presidential election. And I walked into the room, and there were, I don't know, maybe 50 or so people in there. And I said it prior to that, I said, Donald Trump's going to win. Probably 6 months out, I said, Donald Trump's going to win this election. You know, and I was a Bernie Sanders supporter in 2016. I'd gone down to the convention. I did all of that, and you know, and I was deeply involved in the campaign, and so I knew the movement that had been started, and I saw how the Democratic Party was just disenfranchising those voters, and not only the Bernie Sanders voters, but how the party had discounted the pain and suffering of so many Americans who wanted change, who wanted something transformative done in their lives, right? And so they served up Hillary Clinton. And people realized that there was not going to be any change. So 1.4 million blacks off-ramped from voting for her, plus a whole bunch of other people. And the Democratic Party blamed everybody else instead of taking on the blame for themselves and saying, we didn't put up a candidate who was really going to bring about some transformative change. But anyway, I was at the Robert Treat, and I said to them, I said, Donald Trump's going to win. And they all, to a person, actually, there was the person I came with also believed that Donald Trump was going to win. And so as the returns were coming in, like the somberness came over the room, Darren, and then, you know, Donald Trump won. Here's what I'm going to say. It's not a national election. Right? It's not. It is going to be those same states. Donald Trump is playing those same states: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, what are the other?
Florida, Ohio.
Right. Those are the states that he's playing in. You know, and so here you got to ask yourself this question: when you're talking to those people who are hurting in Pennsylvania, can Bloomberg go and have a conversation with them? When you go to Wisconsin, can Bloomberg go and have a conversation with those workers? I mean, when you go and look at his past, when you look at how Bloomberg fought against raises, when you look at all of the anti-union stuff when he was a Republican, can he go in those areas and fight? See, that's where the fight is. It's not going to be in some of these other places. The fight's going to be literally, it's going to be in these really tiny districts, and they're going to be razor thin margins. And what I'm saying is this: I don't believe that Bloomberg's record is going to play well. I really don't.
Eric, under regular circumstances, I would say you are 1,000% correct, brother. But the problem is, as we're seeing already, is the money. Stacey Abrams, Meeks, and Congressman Meeks, and the other people from the Congressional Black Caucus. See, the money. One of my financial mentors told me something years ago. He said, Darren, they won't tell you, but everybody has a price. He said everybody has a price, and that's why you get Al Sharpton on the take and other people on the take. So under regular circumstances, Eric, I would agree with you, but brother, money changes the game. It changes, unfortunately, because a lot of these people that claim they love their community and they for their people and they're going to defend their people, man, once that money is waved, man, that dead president, those dollar signs, they on the take, brother. They are on the take. It's happening already.
I know. We see it happening. But the question is, because they were on the take in, I mean, not to this extent, right? But they were on the take in 2016 with Hillary Clinton. Right, so you had all of the, you know, we refer to them as Negro whisperers and slave catchers here on the show, and you had them parading her around in the community saying that she was the best thing for them, and 1.4 million black people stayed home. So you understand what I'm saying? So you're gonna have this. So they're rolling it out again, and yes, I agree with you that they're looking and saying, well, the dynamic that's different is you have a sitting president and you have a record that he's got to run on, as opposed to in 2016 where Obama had served his 2 terms and you had 2 individuals who had no record, right, as president, and they were presenting their vision to the country. So now, you know, Bloomberg is the nominee. You know, he's going to have to explain why, you know, Donald Trump's vision for America didn't work, right? But the question is going to be how much do you want to roll back? Because in the end, when you look at it, Bloomberg is a Republican. Out of convenience for him, for his own personal gain, he became a Democrat. I mean, and that is the truth. And literally, there are more clips out there than the ones that I just played. There are a plethora of them out there. Remember, this guy has been in the circuit for a long time, and he was unashamedly a Republican.
Yeah,
so the way he blamed
at the convention, spoke at the convention and everything, and that's why I like those clips you showed. And like you said, there's a lot more out there because I saw some over the weekend as well. But it shows you how much alike these two are, Bloomberg and Trump. I mean, they can be brothers.
So the question becomes, is it the devil you know versus the devil you don't know? I mean, is Bloomberg's, the fact that you can have a guy spend $400 million on ad campaign buys, rise 19% in the polls without ever having to go and campaign. That's scary. That should be scary to every single American. It should be scary to every single American that you can bypass or buy, right? Buy-pass a.
I like it.
Right? You can bypass a system where people believed that they were the watchdogs of democracy, right? So if you want to be president, you've got to come into my town. You've got to shake hands and kiss my baby. He said, no, I don't. I don't have to come in your town. I don't have to know your name. I don't have to, like every other politician does, right? You bring up somebody's name. Oh, when I was on the campaign trail, I ran into a woman named Mary who told me that she, lost 2 jobs and she's got 15 kids and I'm fighting for Mary. He didn't have to do any of that. He said, I don't have to do any of it. He said, I'm going to hire the slickest advertising agencies money can buy, and they're going to put together the slickest commercials, and I'm going to run them every day, all day on television. And that's how I'm going to grow in my polls, because I know you as Americans are just consumers of information. Misinformation for the most part. That's scary.
Right. And what's even more interesting, I've been watching, like you, some of the feeds on social media. I saw one yesterday where people were talking about I just don't even know what they're looking at or reading or viewing. They said that Bernie can't win. So I chimed in. I said, maybe you guys are not looking at the fundraiser numbers. Maybe you guys aren't looking at the polls. Maybe you don't realize that he just won again. Another. I said, guys, do you have your eyes open? I said, with all of the stuff they're doing to him and trying to do against him, that's only increasing the people who's backing him. Everybody sees that happening because Biden is gone. He's dead. He's in the gutter. I don't care what he does in South Carolina. I mean, he's the old product, man. I mean, that nobody. They leave him on the sports shelf. They don't want him. And I'm telling you, I don't know how the heck, honestly, they're gonna beat Bernie this time. I don't know how they're gonna beat him this time because he got even more people backing him this time than the 16.
He just had an event with 17,000 people that showed up. He had an event, 17,000 people showed up. The event the night before, he had 11,000 people show up. You can't discount those people, and you can't discount his fundraising apparatus. He literally, because he's got 7 million individual donations, right? So the guy can ask for $10 from each person, right, and wind up with $30 million in one haul. So it's going to be very, very interesting, man. But that's what I'm saying. So if you look at those people and call them Bernie Bros or whatever you want to call them, those people are more in tune. They're more conscious about what's going on in this election, Darren. And given how the Democratic Party has shown its hand in terms of being in bed with Mike Bloomberg and willing to be purchased, they will off-ramp their votes you'll have the black. I think you're going to have close to 1 million black people who won't vote if Bloomberg is the nominee. So I think that they will, based on that, hand the election back over to Donald Trump. He'll win by huge margins.
Yeah.
And so that's where I get to the question, which is their end game, right? Given the fact that they don't want to share economic and political power, and endorsing and supporting a guy like Bernie Sanders would mean, right, the tearing down of the current system, and the the idea at least of sharing economic and political power. And if that's not something that they're interested in doing, would they prefer to just battle it out with Donald Trump for another 4 years, right? And then and then reset the system after 4 years? Because if Bernie Sanders wins, this whole thing is torn down forever. They can reset in 4 years. Correct. They can reset in 4 years if they keep Donald Trump in office. Anyway, hey, listen, last thing, and I didn't get a chance to talk about it. So you've got Donald Trump has deployed ICE agents all over the place now in these sanctuary cities, and they're corralling folks, and people are angry about it. Look, here's my position, and my position, I try to keep it really steady. If people are here illegally, they shouldn't be. I just don't think that they should be. There's a pathway to citizenship, and it gets really murky trying to explain to a child who you're telling to obey the law that you are supporting people who are actively breaking the law.
Right.
And I'm just gonna leave it there.
I agree.
Right. I'm not gonna go any further than that. I'm just gonna say, how do you do that? So, with that being said, Brother Darren, I appreciate you.
Yeah, let's talk later on today. I want to, two things. I need to, of course, I'm coming on March 14th to come out to support. You know that already.
Hey, I appreciate that.
And two, I need to come and get my ADO, my shirt, my shirt, my hat.
Hey, man, listen, I wear this hat, Darren, and I can't tell you how many people, have ordered them, man. But I think that it is going to be this along with some other things, going to be some defining things that we're doing. On yesterday's show, and I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, but I was asked why do we keep repeating some of the same stuff, and I said it's important. We have to continue to hammer it out, right? When I ended the show. And it was phenomenal, right? Sometimes we get low numbers, sometimes we get higher numbers. I keep going no matter how many numbers we got, but I think it was somewhere around 1,400.
You gotta keep going, yeah.
Yeah, we just gotta keep pushing. But when I ended the show and I went upstairs and I turned on the news, guess what? They were just feeding more misinformation, and I literally wanted to come back downstairs and crank up again. You understand? Because I'm given 2 hours, but there are 24 hours in a day. So the 22 hours that I'm not on air, I'm afraid that people are going to get misinformation, and then they're going to push that out into the airwaves, and then I get pushed back. How many more steps in trying to unravel and unpack the nonsense that's out there? I mean, I can't. Darren, I read the threads of people who literally are supporting. What's his name? Mike Bloomberg, right? They literally are saying, let bygones be bygones with stop and frisk. Let bygones be bygones with his comments about redlining. Let bygones be bygones with his comment about, God, how do you say that a 95-year-old person who has cancer that we should just send them back home and let them die? But they're saying, let bygones be bygones with all that because our mission is to defeat Donald Trump. And what I'm saying is, no, our mission is to seize economic and political power.
Yeah, and that's why the viewer you had on last night that said you preaching to the choir, I believe everybody knows this. You told her the correct thing. Everybody doesn't know because some people are walking around not knowing this stuff, and they say, "Oh, really?" The same thing happens to me all the time. What do you Jimmy, are you sure about this? And I pulled it up on my phone. They said, oh my gosh, I didn't know about that. Guys, open your eyes. My goodness. We had a very pivotal moment in our time right here, brother. This is pivotal. Pivotal.
It is a pivotal moment. All right, guys, listen, I want to thank you all for tuning in. Darren, thanks for calling in, my brother. And,
brother, I'll call you later on. I want to come by and get my shirt, and I don't know what the cost is for for March 14th, whatever. I want to pay for that stuff and get that out the way.
All right, brother. Appreciate you. Love you all. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, I'll call you later on. Love you, brother.